Taneja. I live in Bangalore and I'm a writer. I write science and science fiction and fantasy for young adults, kids and adults. I'll show you today, I'll show you a few of my books. This is called an Anantya Tantrist Mystery. It's a urban fantasy based in Delhi, where a tantric detective solves supernatural crime. This is for young adults and for adults, and this is one of my best-selling series that I've written a few years ago. And then I write some science fiction stories, and this is one of the anthologies on solar punk anthology, which means positive science fiction imaginations. And I have a story here in which dolphins take over the world, and the rest you'll have to read. It's an interesting story. But today I'm here to talk about my latest book, which is on science, a non-fiction story. And it's called They Made What? Or if you flip it over, it's called They Found What? This is for tweens onwards. This is a book for kids, starts for kids and kind of continues on to adults. And I wanted to see with this book if it's possible to make it funky, make science funky and creative. And I think the form of it, the kind of the flip bookness of it also, and inside also it's like it's 10 chapters in one side, and then it kind of, you have to flip it over to see the 10 chapters of the other side. And as the title suggests, it's stories of ingenious inventions by scientists, or the They Found What part, which is about discoveries of scientists. And these are contemporary scientists. These are scientists that I interviewed as a journalist, scientists that I spoke to, 20 passionate, daring scientists. 2 of them not alive anymore, but 18 of them contemporary, and you can email them, you can call them. And that's, I think, one of the fascinating part for me in building this book, was that I was choosing contemporary scientists to write about. For example, there's Divya Muddabha, who decided to grow a forest in Valparai. Or there's Vijay Lakshmi, who's a scientist in IISc, who can't get enough of looking into human brains. She's a brain researcher. Then there's celebrity scientists like Sonam Wangchuk, who's making artificial glaciers to combat climate emergency in Ladakh. So there's these beautiful, fascinating stories about science and how creative scientists have to be, imaginative scientists have to be, to tackle today's challenges. Other than mind-boggling stories that fascinated me, because I was going after the title. The titles are They Made What? They Found What? That kind of a expressive thing, something that boggles your mind when you hear about it. Other than this, each chapter has like little extras which I loved creating. For example, there's this. This is a chapter about frogs, a new frog that was discovered in Western Ghats, and this is like a coloring box at the end of the chapter. Or then, of course, there's this batty cat who keeps on laughing at all the scientists inside and asks them how to create rats. How she can create juicier rats. That's her obsession. So I'm hoping that kids love this, and they have been. I've been getting really good reviews about this. So please pick up this book and read it. And if you do read it, tell me whether you liked it, what you would like to add on in it. There's also, it's full with little asides and explanation of different parts of modern science. And yeah, it's I love how it's turned out to be. I'm quite proud of it, as a writer, which is a rare thing, because writers can be quite self-critical. Well, my earliest memory of stories, of somebody who told me stories, is my nani, my grandmother, my mom's mom. And it's during monsoon. I mean, I'm talking to you guys around monsoon right now. And then this is in Delhi. I grew up in Delhi, and when my nani would visit me during monsoon, and there's like this rain that's happening, and as I told you, electricity would go off sometimes. Sometimes I was with my cousins, like regaling them with horror stories, but sometimes I have these memories of my nani sitting with me and telling me these beautiful long stories about kings and queens and lizards and snakes, and like building up these tall stories which will keep going on and on and on, and every time it's the same story from mythology maybe, or folklore or something that she knows, but every time they would change a little bit because it's a new version. It's the new version of the same person telling you new stories. So that's something that made me kind of love the idea of stories and how we change as we listen to them every time as well. I think that's something that I keep bringing into my books also enthusiastically. Well, this story is a silly thing that happened in my childhood. Now, I grew up in the 90s, and as some of you who have grown up with me in the 90s might know, that at that time, and I was in Delhi, I lived in Delhi, I grew up in Delhi, when electricity would go off in the summers and you would be like plunged into complete darkness, you know. And I was growing up in a big family, so I had a lot of cousins or friends always around me to play with. And I loved to, like, you know, sit in a circle with all my cousins, some older, mostly younger, and tell them horror stories. So I would have like this little torch in the middle, or I'll have a candle. Candle's like much more, you know, kind of creates that aura because it's also slightly moving with the breeze that's coming from outside. So I would, like, you know, always like sit with them and tell them horror stories. And I think the stories, the idea of creating these stories and scaring people, or just getting a reaction from listeners in that case, kind of stayed with me as I continued in my career. I became a journalist and kind of moved on from there. And this is how it's kind of stayed with me. As I was a journalist, I was talking to other people and chasing their stories. Like, you know, a journalist needs to kind of imbibe all these stories and write an article around them. Take thoughts of other different types of people in the society. And then I realized that sometimes there are these people in my head who kind of prop up, characters who prop up. And I would like to imagine their stories, and I would like to build their stories. And that's how I became an author. That's how I became a writer. One of the first book that I've mentioned to you my debut novel was called Ghost Hunters of Kurseong. And that's how Karthik, the main protagonist of that, which is a mystery book for kids, came to me. He had just moved from Mumbai to Kurseong, which is like a small town near Darjeeling. He had never heard of it. And he's 13 and he hates it. He hates it in the beginning. And then before he knows it, as he's like so busy hating it and his life has been disrupted and everything, he already finds new friends and starts getting involved in a ghost mystery. And that's how the story starts. It's fantastic. And I think once I gave space to these imaginary characters, I just couldn't stop. So I kept writing new and new characters in each of these stories, and it's been amazing. Right now I'm writing a science fiction, a genre that I haven't written in a novel form. I've written some short stories. And it's super tough thinking of new characters, but once you know the character, once you know what he or she desires, where are they going, it's beautiful to be with them and listen into them and see what they desire and this is that journey, to capture their journey out. And I think characters is what fascinates me, even in non-fiction. This latest book that I talked about, that They Made What, has 20 characters for me, 20 scientists whose stories I'm talking about from their point of view, from their experiences. It was beautiful to look at the world through their passions. I mean, I gave you a couple of examples of Vijaya Lakshmi, for example. The fact that she loves looking through a microscope into a brain, into the beautiful machinery that a brain has. It's something that fascinates me as a writer, to be able to capture her story into a chapter. You know, it's both challenging because you have to understand that little passion that pushes each person, you or me, and bring that out in this structured story. I think that's why I am a writer. That's why I'm an author, and I continue to write. It's the people, the characters, humans or non-humans or aliens or monsters, whose stories I love to figure out, whose passions I love to kind of thread in. That's why I'm a writer, definitely. Well, what inspires me to write? It's different things. Sometimes it's bits and pieces of newspaper. Sometimes it's characters that like crop up in my head, like they kind of come here. I've always tried to figure where how do characters crop up, but it's always like this sudden beam that kind of hits in, and this character is like slowly built up, and then sometimes the character, it's a phrase that the character is thinking or talking about, or just people who want to become alive through my writing, and I have to build upon those people, kind of move in the direction. And sometimes it's a little idea that I want to take shape with, and that's why I write stories. Inspiration comes from everywhere. It can be a little bird, it can be a little insect, it can be a little piece of scribble that somebody's written somewhere, newspapers, and then images. Art has always inspired me also. It's always some combination of colors that suddenly brings a little story in my head. It's fascinating how inspiration kind of comes. I've always read about other people's inspirations, and I always think that it's hard to explain. It's like electricity. It's invisible, but it's all around you. That's what inspiration, that's how ideas happen to me, I think. Yeah. If I had to be a character from a book, and I'm wearing yellow, so the first thing that comes to my mind is SpongeBob. I mean, he's bright, adaptive, he has so much fun, and he's always like doing these quirky things, and then he's optimistic. I've always liked optimistic, spunky characters, and I idolize them. I'm like, I want to be like that, and bring some cheer into the world. It's too dark otherwise, and I want to write them as well. And I think Dobby, the semi-slave in the Harry Potter series, is someone I love as well, for his spunk, for his like, let's do this, I want to be free. And he's so different from the rest of his clan, that he wants his freedom, and he's in the bottom of the society, that way hierarchy, but that doesn't bog him down. He's doing whatever he wants to. And I love this positive can-do attitude, and I identify with it. I think I can do anything that I've set my mind on. I think another character that I really liked was Toothless, but that's in the cartoon series of How to Train Your Dragon. I love how he's so daring, and he's so quiet, and he also becomes attached to another species and actually goes out of his way to do so many things. So yeah, I kind of like that character too. Yeah. Subjects and titles of books. When I start writing them, there's always this little niggle in the brain. It starts like a small idea, a little knot maybe, or a pimple that you desire to pop. Those are how the titles start. And then the title grows on into the book. But it's not necessary that it always starts with the title. It would start with a little idea also. And then I think titles and subjects are something that is also a marketing driven concept in publishing. For example, this one, the They Made What and They Found What book, my latest book, these titles came to me, and that's how the book formed. It was starting from the title, like a proper way, title and then concept and then expand it and then the book forms. This was a proper book. But sometimes the titles don't come to you till the very end, and you've written the whole book and you don't know what to name it. And sometimes there are brilliant editors who help you out, figure out a name which will catch on with other readers also. Like Ghost Hunters of Kurseong was a completely different title. That was my first book, and that's the title that was given to it by the editor, and now I love it. So it goes both ways, and titles are important in a way because it just makes you decide how to pick up a book or not to pick up a book. That's the first attraction that is there. And yeah, it's a mix-up of, for different books, it's different, I think, yeah. Well, what I want to convey to readers, hopefully, of my writing is, first, I want readers themselves to have fun, to be entertained. You know that story circle that I told you about when electricity would go off and all me and my cousins were sitting and I would tell them stories? So I think as a writer, for me, the most important thing is that the readers should be engaged, should be entertained. The story is there so that they can enjoy themselves, and I'm not the important thing there at all. But while the readers are being entertained, all of my books have, while they're laughing out loud, while there's this roller coaster with all my characters and you're thoroughly enjoying yourself, I think I also want people to reflect a little bit on biases, and that's where fantasy and science fiction, the speculative fiction, alternate society building as a genre is interesting, because you're looking at your own society and you have this alternate society where gender, caste, race issues have a different meaning. And then maybe when you're reading a story set in this society, you reflect on your own society and say maybe things can be different, things can be alternate to that. And that's beautiful about the genre that I've chosen to write in as well. We can create a mirror to our own society and reflect about our own prejudices, or the idea of us versus them. And more as our society is so demarcated or divided amongst different clans, different families, different religions, maybe this is important for us to have empathy for the others, be it the monster or the alien. This is something that kind of I keep coming back to as a core theme in my work, most of my work, where it's about understanding the others. And that's something I hope that while you're getting entertained, while you're laughing out loud at those silly jokes, and I have lots of silly jokes in my books, you kind of reflect on this as well. Yes, that's my biggest hope, I think. I think one of the characters that I've identified most with the people, see, I call her a person also, and she's a person who I've had Twitter conversations with, for example, is Anantya Tantrist. She is one of the biggest series, most ambitious series that I wrote, Anantya Tantrist Mysteries, and she's a tantric detective based in Delhi who's solving supernatural crime. I grew up in Delhi, so there were lots of parallels with her character and me. And this series is written in the first person, so it's about her story completely. And she's very action oriented, and I'm very like, let me sit and write, kind of a person. And she's like, totally kick ass, and she walks the night in Delhi and solves supernatural crime, fights monsters. And I loved living through Delhi through her eyes. I loved the fact that I was in Delhi. I was traveling every day on streets that, for me as a woman growing up in Delhi as a girl, I was a little scared to walk by, kind of thing. But she's so fearless, and I think through her, I lived Delhi again. And I love that feeling. I love the fact that I could write her character, and I could live and see my city, the city that I grew up in, through this character's eyes, and it's melded. I still feel she lives in Old Delhi, and she's like hanging out in Vedaldi bar. Her favorite drink is Soma on the rocks, and she's probably figuring out a monster to hang out with right now, but yeah, that she's remains one of my favorite characters who I've had a crazy adventure with. In future, maybe I'll write some more books of hers, but right now, nothing on the table yet. Wow, travel's a good question to ask. I have so many places that I want to visit. I think with the COVID situation, my travel has been a little subdued in the last 1.5 years, but I have been lucky to have traveled already internationally and in India to different beautiful exotic places. I think since it's the COVID situation has made our boundaries less porous, I would like to explore much more of the Northeast in India. My recent fascination is with forests. I'm a bird watcher and nature lover. That's my alternate career also. I work with a nature conservation NGO. And I would definitely want one trip to the Northeast this year. And what else? Maybe definitely Spiti. I think I want to visit the kind of high desert feel that Spiti and Ladakh have. It's nowhere found in the world. It's beautiful. It's sparse. It's rugged beauty. Then I want to go to Andamans because I want to dive under the sea and see that beautiful, bustling life that is the sea, that is the ocean at all times. From outside you can't see anything, and the moment you're inside, there's like so much happening around you, so much life, and you're just so thankful to be someone who can witness it. That's one of the beautiful moments. Diving is one of the beautiful things that I've experienced in the past, and I would like to repeat that. Internationally, I'm very interested in Ethiopia to go for bird watching, and do Peru. South America is a continent I haven't touched, and I would love to see the Amazon forest in Brazil and Machu Picchu in Peru. That's something that I would love. The high altitude plateaus of West Asia, so much, and Japan and Korea is something I haven't touched for culture and food, and I'm crazy about manga, comics. It's been a huge inspiration for the comics that I've written. I'm a travel hog, so give me anything. There's no top places. I would be happy going anywhere. But these are the ones that are secretly on my secret list that if they come true, I would be very happy about. Well, other than writing, and there are a lot of other things that I enjoy. Of course, travel is one that I love to travel. I love to chat with people, to take in their point of views, explore. But I think my alternate life more and more as I'm growing up is of being an eco-warrior of sorts. I'm going towards conserving environment more and more, becoming more aware of the trees, the insects, the little life around us. I walk in forests, gardens and beaches. I document birds. Bird watching is something that gives me immense pleasure. And it's kind of timely, isn't it? Because you are getting into a phase of life where you can't do really big collectives of people. Probably is not possible for the next few years. So it's a good thing that this is something that, especially in the last year, has given me so much joy. Bird watching as an activity. Can you see those binoculars behind me? Yeah, so they're always there because I have this beautiful view here in my study of the lake. And what I do is, when I'm writing, my binoculars on my left, and I'm typing a little bit, and then suddenly I see a pelican, and then I'm like looking up through binoculars, and then back to writing again. So it's really woven up in my life, and I love it. I love it absolutely every second of bird watching. So it's given me immense pleasure recently. Yes. Well, my message for young readers, and this is coming from my book They Made What. Because I spoke to a lot of scientists, and I realized this is an important message which people always maybe take for granted and never really say out, is you need to keep curious. You need to always poke things, question things. That's one of the things that I learned from all these scientists that I interviewed. They're all curious about little things, little things that they're obsessed about, that they're like passionate about, that they're getting deep into. And they keep questioning the status quo, always. So I feel that, do that. Keep questioning everything. Even if you get adults tell you not to, I would say keep questioning. Be curious. Do not be afraid to ask any kind of question. It can be anything, something as silly as Batty's obsession, which is about how can I create juicy rats. It's a valid research question for her as a scientist, Do not belittle yourselves. Stand up tall and ask any question that strikes in that little head of yours. And do not forget humor. You have to keep laughing. Life is too serious. Why are you so serious? Keep laughing. You have to practice every day. See, I do practice every day. I do like, I practice like that every day. So you have to laugh every day. Life is too short, and it's too beautiful to be serious, Be curious and always laugh. As a writer, I have written many things. I've written a mystery for kids called Ghost Hunters of Kurseong, a fantasy series called Anantya Tantrist Mysteries, which is a tantric detective based in Delhi. I have also written comics. One of them is called Krishna Defender of Dharma, which is a mythology graphic novel. And some of these have done really well internationally also, and some of these have gotten critical acclaim. I have also received, I was a finalist in a prestigious French award. One of my short stories was translated into French and published in their science fiction magazine called Galaxies. And I have also received Charles Wallace Writing Fellowship, and I've given talks internationally in WorldCon and Eurocon and Cartoon Museum in London. But one of my most favorite, I think the biggest award I would say that I've received in my writing career, and it's been more than a decade that I've been writing, is a painting of an owl and I've nicknamed the owl Specky, which was gifted to me by an 11-year-old fan. This was for my first book that I had written, Ghost Hunters of Kurseong. And I think Specky, along with Batty and Foxy, two characters that I've created in my latest book, They Made What, remind me every day to be humble, to work hard, and create fascinating worlds for my readers. I think that's what keeps me going. That's what inspires my writing, that I want to create entertaining worlds for my readers who can kind of plunge into them and get lost in that little sea, just that circle. When readers come back to me to tell me how they liked it, or what they liked about the book, those are my best awards. I love listening to those stories, always. So if you've ever read my work, please write to me. I would love to listen to your thoughts on it. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening to me so patiently and being genuinely interested in my story. Before I go, I would just like to add that if you want, you can borrow from House of Books and Tales. It's a beautiful library, and you can even order a copy for your own copy from them. And thank you, House of Books and Tales, for taking time out and sharing my story with all your followers. Folks, if you want to read a lot of books, I would suggest you should borrow them anyway. And the House of Books and Tales have a wonderful curated collection of stuff, and they are readers themselves, which is something that I like in librarians. I'll go now to my cozy little corner, that corner that I mentioned with the pelicans view, to read and write. Meanwhile, keep your chin up, be curious, and always be reading a book. Until next time, this is Shweta Taneja again, and you can see me online at Shweta Writes. I live in Bangalore, and I'm signing off now. Okay, bye-bye.